Former Nightline host Ted Koppel did something brave recently. He said something that was obviously true. During remarks to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Koppel said the press has abandoned objectivity and is now pursuing a political vendetta.
I'm terribly concerned that when you talk about the New York Times these days, when you talk about the Washington Post these days, we're not talking about the New York Times of 50 years ago. We are not talking about the Washington Post of 50 years ago. We're talking about organizations that I believe have, in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the United States.
Fox senior political analyst Brit Hume worked with Ted Koppel for many years and joins us tonight. Brit, I don't think of Ted Koppel as a conservative figure at all, but he just said something that I think many on the left will hate. Is it true, and why did he say it, do you think?
I think it's unmistakably true, Tucker, and you're right. I did work with Ted Koppel for many years. He's old school, much as I am. We come out of the same tradition, which is neutrality in news coverage, opinions reserved for columnists and editorial writers. And in broadcast journalism, you have certain commentators and you have correspondents who cover the news. And those lines of separation have become increasingly blurred. And in the age of Trump, as Koppel suggested, they've gone completely out the window because of a sense among journalists that the election of Donald Trump constituted a national emergency, and it was their duty as patriots to resist it and to do all they could to undo this presidency, which they have assiduously, in my judgment, tried to do, and we see it reflected constantly.
I suppose what I find so infuriating about it is how indirect and dishonest it is. I mean, opinion people are pretty straightforward about it. We are on this show. Rachel Maddow, I'm not mad at Rachel Maddow. She says exactly who she is. There's no misleading anybody about being an opinion person. Why shouldn't news people who decide to become activists just say so out loud?
Well, I agree with that, but I think what happened here is that Watergate really is a factor here, because in that moment, which was the most exciting, the most extraordinary moment in modern journalistic history in the United States, you know, these two young reporters that were seen as bringing down a president of the United States. You know, we'd all been told that the Fourth Estate was powerful and so forth, but none of us had ever seen anything like this. This was truly remarkable. It was glamorous. They were celebrated in movies. They were the subject of endless books and so on, and it was an extraordinary moment, and it created an atmosphere in which I think journalists want to relive that. And here comes a target even more unpopular than Richard Nixon was, in the person of Donald Trump. And they have gone about their business. And it is, and you know, back in those days, the Washington Post reporting on Watergate, which was so celebrated, was pretty darn solid.
I know.
But when Donald Trump gave his State of the Union address this year, the headline in the next day's Washington Post, banner headline said, "A discordant appeal for unity." Now, that is an opinion. You didn't used to see that in headlines. And the news pages of any newspapers, let alone the Washington Post. As Ted Koppel said, things have changed, and they have, and not for the better, in my judgment.
No, they're undermining their own currency, for sure. Brit Hume, thank you for that. Great to see you.
You bet.
The very latest breaking news on whether or not Joe Biden is going to run. So he reportedly reached out to multiple supporters late today, asking to secure donations in the effort to launch a presidential bid. This, as some suggest that Biden and potential rival Bernie Sanders could potentially be too old to be president. That is the headline today in one of the opinion pieces in the Washington Post. And I should mention that it was written by a guy who's the same age as them, and he says that they're too old. So that's his opinion. But should age be fair game in politics, especially when the older candidates are leading in the polls? Joe Biden is 76. He's ahead of the pack at 28%. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, 77, trails with 20%. And now another candidate vying for the presidency, 2020 Democrat John Delaney, also a former Maryland congressman. Sir, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
You know, what do you think about that? Do you think it's right? You know, we live in this age where you can't talk about gender. You can't talk about, is it okay to say someone's too old?
I don't think any of these people are too old to be the president. I mean, I don't think it should be a factor. I think the president should be whoever the American people want to be their leader. Right, that's really the criteria. That's all that matters. I don't think people should be telling the American people that, someone based on their age isn't qualified to be the president. That's up for the American people to decide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ageism, you know, when you look at some of these people, you know, I mean, for instance, the chairman of this company just did the biggest deal of his life, and he is in a later age group than they are. I think that age is a number, you know? I mean, I think some people are very old when they're 60, and some people don't get old until they're 90.
It's a stupid conversation to have.
Okay,
right?
so
I mean, it's up to the American people.
Though, you're going to hear a lot of it, because people look at, you know, Reagan, they look at all of the people who, you know, also were in their like 70s, and they say this is a factor. Perhaps somebody shouldn't be able to run. But I think you're right. I think the American people are going to decide that. I want to get a quick thought from you. Let's talk about some of the younger people who are also running like you. Cory Booker's out there, and here's what he wanted to emphatically make clear, that he is not a socialist. Watch this.
I am for capitalism. I'm tired of companies engaging in socialism, where they outsource, their costs. So I'm a capitalist. Monopolies are not capitalism. I am not a socialist.
We've got people in the party who are.
I am a Democrat.
Why is this a conversation in
Right.
America?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, listen, I'm a capitalist. I was an entrepreneur before I ran for office. I started 2 companies, took them public on the New York Stock Exchange. I was the youngest CEO on the New York Stock Exchange when I took my first company public. I created thousands of jobs. I financed thousands of companies all over the country. So I believe in the power of capitalism and its ability to create jobs and innovate. But I also believe in strong social programs. And in many ways, the genius of America is that we allowed capitalism to do its magic, but we moderated it with societal infrastructure, regulation,
that sounds kind of like Elizabeth Warren. She wants like a controlled kind of capitalism.
Well, but look at what we've had. We've had a free market economy, and we had things like public education, infrastructure that was paid for by taxpayers, Medicare, Social Security. So in many ways, it's a false choice. Of course, we're a capitalist country, but we also historically have had great social programs that lift people up. I mean, my parents didn't go to college, right? I grew up at a time when the infrastructure in society supported people like me in pursuing my dreams, right?
Don't you think that those programs have become ineffective and bloated?
Yes, they have to be updated. That's been our great tragedy as a society.
No other candidate's going to say that. Nobody's going to talk about taking away anything or changing any of those benefits or programs.
Well, we have to update them. Look, at every kid in this country should start at pre-K, right? It's been proven to be the best investment we make, right? That should be part of basic public education. That would change the trajectory of kids' lives. They should have something after high school, career and technical training, maybe community college, to give them a shot. We haven't updated the basic institutions of our society to allow people to pursue their dreams and have the kind of opportunities I've had. You know, this generation of Americans is going to be the first one that doesn't do better than their parents. Think about that, the first one.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
And so what we got to do is get back to our model.
We'll see how you do. Everybody else is talking about, having 24 Supreme Court justice, members of the Supreme Court justice, and abandoning the Electoral College. Are you in favor of either of those things?
Listen, I would love to get rid of the Electoral College because I don't think it's the right way, but it's not changing, right? I think to some extent it's a total waste of time to talk about it. Like if I was starting from scratch, might I do it differently?
Talk about
Of course, but I'd rather talk about improving public education, creating a better healthcare system, lowering drug prices, investing in infrastructure, doing things that matter to the American people than to talk about something that's going to happen.
We'll see how you do. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you tonight.
All right, new tonight, over 1 million illegal immigrants are openly defying the U.S. government by ignoring their final deportation notice. That's right. So our government has told them, you know what? You got to go. Final notice. You got to go. You must go. And yet they're not going. They won't leave. Joining me right now, Fox News contributor Deneen Borelli and columnist Adam Epstein. Deneen, what does our government do when they tell them to get out and people don't go?
Well, there's also a record number of illegals who are in the process to be deported, and they're not going as well. Trish, these numbers are staggering, and our border security, they are overworked. Our border is overworked, overwhelmed, and when you look at the fact that there are only a certain number of facilities, a certain number of beds, a certain number of judges to do the processing, this really is the breaking point. Just for for the month of March alone, the Department of Homeland Security is projecting that 100,000 illegals will be caught at the border. And in February, for the month of February, over 70,000 tried to enter our country. So this really is a breaking point. Something really needs to change, and quickly.
Adam, do you agree with that?
Well, look, I am a Democrat who's for border security, and I believe that our immigration discussion has been literally paralyzed by discussions about the wall, when we should be talking about smart measures to stop this. That includes beefed up border security, more surveillance, more coordination, for example, with federal and local governments to deal with drug cartels. There is an issue going on, but this is not, it does not require an emergency declaration.
Adam, at one time,
it requires a bipartisan support.
And by the way, I don't disagree with you that it's got to be comprehensive, and there's a lot more than
Democrats
just a wall.
voted for
a wall is a simple way of saying we need more security. A wall is part of it, but you need more than that overall. I get it.
Yes, you do.
But they're not meeting the president halfway on this. You know that. They're not willing to give him even the fence that Hillary Clinton once proposed.
Well, that's not entirely true, because House Democrats proposed a $5 billion bill, which included a lot of the things I just enumerated, but it was all caught up in this campaign promise the president keeps doubling down upon, which, okay, some kind of barrier is part of a discussion, but it can't completely paralyze the whole discussion, and that's what I really think is happening.
But you guys are the ones that are letting it paralyze the discussion. I mean, Deneen, if they just said, okay, yeah, we'll have a barrier, we'll have a fence, we'll have a wall, whatever you want to call it, we're going to have some kind of structure that says to those that might be trying to seep through the border, okay, can't do it, right? It's a deterrence in some ways. And then, yes, you get on to the rest of the package, right, Deneen?
No, this is absolutely true, Trish. It's not just about the wall. We need all hands on deck, whatever is necessary to secure our border. And this is for the safety and security of Americans. President Trump's promise for all Americans, not just a certain political party, which is what the left is just not getting. They are clearly on the wrong side of safety and security when it comes to Americans.
Okay, so that brings me to MS-13. And we got a report that said that half of all the gang members that are being arrested right now at our borders come from MS-13. I don't need to tell everybody how violent, how atrocious, how awful MS-13 is, you know. So, Adam, if you're just looking at it from a sort of safety viewpoint for American citizens, and by the way, Hispanics as well, because MS-13 is hanging out in a lot of Hispanic communities, more so than, you know, hanging out in L.A. with you. So if you want to, no, you're shaking your head, but that's the reality of it, right? I mean, you may have a nice, safe place to live, but the people that are affected by these gangs are literally affected and have to worry.
Trish, I am not endorsing MS-13, and nor am I really disagreeing with you. I'm just saying this is one part of a whole discussion.
You laugh at what I'm saying, and this is just reality, okay?
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing. I'm saying that we can't have a discussion because the president is trying to make an end around Congress. 12 Republicans voted against him to deal with just the wall when there is a comprehensive immigration bill that, yes, Democrats voted for in 06. They did. You're correct. They voted for in 2013. The Senate took it up twice. The House did not. I'm saying I'd like to have a bipartisan discussion about this because I do believe it's an issue. I just don't believe it's a national emergency.
Out of our country? Would you like to get rid of that gang?
Of course I would, but that is not the only centerpiece of the discussion.
MS-13 is throughout our country, Trish, which is really outrageous. Not too far from where you and I are located in New York, Long Island, the numbers are staggering. So again, this is about safety and security.
Again, hey, Adam.
I just think the conversation.
Why are you rolling your eyes? Because these are real issues, and you know what? The safety of American citizens actually matters. So before you keep rolling your eyes at the issue, tell me how we can get to some kind of conclusion here where we can make sure that we don't have gangs like this and gang members coming illegally into our country and then staying.
Again, I don't disagree with you. I said that as part of any comprehensive border package, you need to have strong coordination between the federal government and local and state governments to deal with gang issues, drug-related issues, crime, human trafficking, all the things, by the way, that not just me, but many Democrats want to do. We're just not having a discussion. That doesn't mean we endorse any gang activity. That doesn't mean we're endorsing crime.
I'm very much under the opinion that you guys are just trying to stand in the way of anything that this president could deem a
Right.
success, right? I mean, this was a campaign promise, so let's not forget the political atmosphere that we're living in. We weren't, born yesterday, right, Deneen? I mean, there's some politics
this is about
here.
pushing back, and it's politics about President Trump. And what about the sanctuary cities that the Democrats support so much? I mean, clearly, again, they are on the side of the illegals that are coming here, the criminal illegals, versus their own constituents, the safety and security of
Adam, how do you
innocent,
answer that? Because I
hardworking
think
Americans.
Deneen's making a very
There
good
is
point.
nothing funny about this.
Adam, I think she's got a good point. You got to be on the safety of the American citizens that are here.
I am, and so are the majority of Democrats. That's what I'm trying to say. I can only
Really,
certainly
because
speak for
Gavin
myself
Newsom
at the
wants to
moment
just
sitting
open
here.
the whole country up to sanctuary country, sanctuary California.
You know what?
You like that?
You know what? We have. No, I don't. And the Democrats have to have a
because he's your party,
plan
he's your
to
governor.
deal with it. But he's my governor, and I like Gavin Newsom. Doesn't mean I have to agree with him on everything. The point is I think that there is a debate that we should have on immigration, which, by the way, before this toxic environment we were living in, was very bipartisan. Okay, of all the senators that voted for it in 2006 and 13, I mean, it was almost universally Democrats supported it. So I don't think that I think we're at a terrible impasse. We can disagree on why we're at that impasse. We are, and I am very serious. I'm not taking anything frivolously. I just think that there's a larger, broader context to discuss that isn't just focused on one particular thing.